Hello guys, I welcome you all to the day 164 of our series, and in today's session we are going to learn some more methods of comparison, of doing comparison of two objects or two persons or two groups, or it can be anything. So let's get started, and here is your yesterday's task. So let's have a look at it first. Here you were supposed to complete the phrases or write down the correct version of the phrases. So the first one is, it is a little world. It would be, it is a small world. Next is, once eaten, twice shy. It is once bitten. Once bitten, twice shy. Next is, the more, the happier. The more, the merrier. Next is, famous last phrase. It is famous last words, something that is definite. Next is, so far no good. It is so far so good. Next is, first come, first served. And next is, out of sight, out of sight, out of mind. Next is, easier sad. Easier sad than done. Now let's move to the next exercise. And here you are supposed to complete the sentences. He will never get married again. Once bitten, twice shy. Next is, we will have tougher times ahead, but so far so good. Next is, since I have been here, I have met 4 people. I know it is a small world. Next is, when she is with you, she makes you feel important, but out of sight, out of mind. Next is, I think he will do well, but you know, you can never tell. You can never tell that what is about to happen. They want to limit the numbers, but in my opinion, the more, the merrier. Next is, she suggested I tried asking for a rise, but that's easier said than done. That's easier said than done. Next is, air passengers are given seats on the basis of first come, first served. Last one is, he said that I look stupid when I dance. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Now keep in mind the spelling of this kettle. Don't use this cattle, C-A-T-T-L-E. That means a group of animals. Now let's move forward. And here is another task based on comparative or superlative degrees. So let's get started. The very first statement is given. This restaurant is very expensive. The opposite of expensive is cheaper. Let's go somewhere cheaper. Next is, this coffee is very weak. So what is the opposite of weak? That is strong. So we have to use the comparative version of strong. So I like it stronger. Next is, the town was surprisingly big. I expected it to be. So what is the opposite of big? It is small. So it would be smaller. Next is, the hotel was surprisingly cheap. I expected it to be. So what is the opposite of cheap? It is expensive. So here the comparative degree of expensive would be more expensive. More expensive. Next is, the weather is too cold here. I would like to live somewhere. So opposite of cold is either hot or warm. You can use either of these adjectives. I would like to live somewhere warmer, or hotter, T-E-R, hotter. Next is, sometimes my job is a bit boring. So what is the opposite of boring? That is interesting. So you have to write the comparative version of interesting, and that is more interesting. I would like to do something more interesting. Next is, It is a shame you live so far away. So far away. I wish you lived. So what is the opposite? What is the antonym of far? It is close. So I wish you lived closer. Or you can also write nearer. Both are correct here. Next is, it was quite easy to find a place to live. So the opposite of easy is hard, difficult, or complicated. So you can use I thought it would be harder, or more complicated, or more difficult. All are correct. Next is, your work isn't very good. And here the statement itself is negative, not very good. That means your work is somehow bad. So we are supposed to write the opposite of bad, means good, and its comparative degree is better. So I'm sure you can do better. Next is, don't worry, the situation isn't so bad. Is not bad means the situation is good, but next is, it could be dash means situation अभी इतनी बुरी नहीं है, इससे भी बुरी हो सकती थी. So we are going to write here, it could be worse. And next is, you hardly ever call me. Why don't you call me? And opposite of hardly means sometime, rarely, and opposite of hardly is very often, frequently. So why don't you call me more often? Or you can also use more frequently. And last one is, you are too near the camera. Can you move a bit dash away? Opposite of near is far, and its comparative degree is, either you can use farther or you can use further. Both are correct. Now let's move to the next exercise. And here you were supposed to pick up the correct word from this box. First and second are already given. I was feeling tired last night, so I went to bed earlier than. And you were supposed to write than after these given adjectives if required. So here early and reliable. Both are already crossed out. Both are because already used, earlier and reliable. Now let's move to the third one. Unfortunately, the problem was dash we thought at first. So unfortunately, the problem was serious. So it would be more serious than we thought at first. Next is, you look dash. Have you lost weight? So you look thinner. You look thinner. Have you lost weight? Next is, we don't have enough space here. We need a dash apartment. We need a bigger apartment. Next is, James doesn't study hard. He is dash in having a good time. He is interested, and I would say more interested. He is more interested in having a good time rather than studying. Next is, health and happiness are dash than money, are more important. More important than money. Next is, I like living in the country. By country, it means I like living in the rural area. It is dash living in a town. It is peaceful. It is peaceful. Or I would say it is more peaceful than living in a town. So next is, I'm so sorry, I don't understand. Can you speak dash please? Can you speak more slowly? More slowly please. Next is, in some parts of the country prices are dash in others. So prices are obviously higher than others. Now let's move to the next exercise. And here again you were supposed to choose your adjectives from the given table. First is already done here. Getting a visa was complicated. It took longer than I expected. So here longer is already crossed out. Next is sorry about my mistake. I'll try to be more dash. In future, I'll try to be more careful. In future, next is your English has improved. It is dash than it was. So it is better than it was. Next is you can travel by bus or by train. The buses are more dash than the trains. So the buses are more frequent. The buses are more frequent than the trains. Next is you can't always have things immediately. You have to be dash patient. Obviously, you have to be more patient. Next is I'm a pessimist. A pessimist is a person who usually doesn't think so much positive about himself or about life. If we can say that this person is slightly negative about his results, about his outcomes. So I'm a pessimist. I always think things are going to get dash worse. Next is we were busier dash usual we were busier than usual. And last one is can you speak more quietly? Now let's move to the next exercise, and it is the last exercise of today's session. So in this exercise you were supposed to read the situation and complete the sentences. Okay, you were supposed to put the correct comparative degree here. First is already given. Yesterday the temperature was 6 degrees. Today it is only 3 degrees. That means it is colder today than it was yesterday. So next is Dan and I went out for a run. I ran 10 kilometers. Dan stopped after 8 kilometers. Now that means I ran farther, or you can also use further than Dan. Next is the journey takes 4 hours by car and 5 hours by train. So the journey takes longer. The journey takes longer by train than by car. Now this is correct. Next is I expected my friends to arrive at 4 o'clock. In fact, they arrived at 2:30. So my friends arrived earlier than I expected. And last one is there is always a lot of traffic here, but today the traffic is really bad. So traffic today is worse than usual. So this was your yesterday's task. Now let's move forward towards our session, towards the comparative and superlative degrees, towards the methods of comparison that we were learning earlier. So here it is given that double comparatives. Well, I have already told you that you cannot use double comparatives or double superlatives at adjacent positions. And what do you mean by adjacent position? Means soon after the other. Here, we and can, both of the words are placed at adjacent positions. So always avoid the usage of double comparatives or double superlatives at adjacent position. For example, let's say example of this word happy. Its comparative degree is happier. And we know that more is also a comparative degree in itself. So we cannot use more and happier together at adjacent position. So, but here it is said that we can use double comparatives, but here is not mentioned that word adjacent anywhere. So we can use double comparatives to say that something is changing. यहाँ पे आप नोटिस करोगे एडजेसेंट पोजीशन पे नहीं है. एग्जांपल्स में हम आएंगे, बीच में कोई ना कोई और वर्ड गिवन है जैसे एंड हो गया. तो अब देखिए, इट इज यूजुअली used to display something that is changing, means some kind of gradual change that is happening continuously. And the structure would be the comparative degree and comparative degree, like more and more. I'm getting fatter and fatter day by day, means I'm gradually getting fat. So we are going more and more slowly, means we have reduced our speed and continuously we are still reducing it. So we are going more and more slowly now. We cannot use more slowly and more slowly. That would sound absurd because we have to avoid the repetition of main words here, not main verb, main adjectives, main words here. वर्ड्स यानी शब्दों को हमें रिपीट नहीं करना, रिपीट करने से बचना है, बट हाँ मोर एंड मोर ये तो खैर रिपीट होंगे ही, वही हम कर रहे हैं डबल कंपैरेटिव का केस. नेक्स्ट में आते हैं. The road is getting more and more steep, or you can also use steeper and steeper. Both are correct, क्योंकि steep की comparative degree जो है वो possible है. Steeper and steeper भी हो सकता है और more and more steep भी possible है. Steep means narrow, means this road is getting narrower as we are moving upside to the hill or whatever. Now next is your English is improving. It is getting better and better, means it is getting better gradually, continuously, day by day. Next is the city has grown fast in recent years. That means it is a continuous process and it is still continuing. So it is got, here it is not, it is here, it has. So it has got bigger and bigger. Next is, as I listened to his story, I became more and more convinced that he was lying, and more tourists are visiting this part of the country. Now let's move forward, and here comes the another structure, article the. Actual structure is article the plus comparative degree, and again article the plus comparative degree. Well, in our previous sessions, we have already discussed that in most of the cases, or I would say in almost all cases, we use article the just before a superlative degree. Means superlative degree always takes article the before it. But in case of comparative degree, there are some exceptions where we can use article the with comparative degree also. And here is this exceptional case, the comparative degree plus the comparative degree. Like, the older I get, the happier I am. So here is the situation when two things are given directly proportional or indirectly proportional to each other. Means if one thing is increasing and the other thing is decreasing in the same proportion, or vice versa, in that case you can use article the with comparative degree. So in this example also, the older I get, the happier I am. Means whenever I'm getting older, means day by day gradually I'm getting older, as well as I'm getting happier with it. Means both of the stuff are directly proportional. So we can use the plus comparative degree, the older and the happier. Next is the more dangerous. It is the more I like it. Again, both things are directly proportional to each other. That's why we are using article the with comparative degree. Next is the more I study, the less I learn. Next is more can be used. Okay, here we have witnessed that we are using article the with comparative degree. And we can also use it like this, the more, and after that money is a noun. Next is the more useless things, it is a noun. So again structure remains the same, बस यहाँ पे जो हमारा noun है ये एक extra add हो गया है. The more money he makes, the more useless things he buys. Structure is similar again. Next is the more information that comes in, the more confused the picture is. इस तरह से आप comparative degree के साथ में भी article the को easily use कर सकते हो. We have already done this, the more the merrier, in our previous session, I guess. So next is, how do you like your coffee? The stronger, the better, or the lighter, the better. Now let's move forward. And here the question is asked, what time shall we leave? Well, you must have heard this answer, ASAP. This is as soon as possible. You can also say that the sooner the better. Next is, what sort of bag do you want? A big one or a little one? So your response can be the bigger the better. In case of bag, in case of food. So next is, when you are traveling, the less luggage you have, the better it is. Next is, the earlier we leave. Here are just examples to make you understand things clearly. The sooner we leave, the earlier we'll arrive. Next is the younger you are, the easier it is to learn some kind of a new subject, new language maybe. Next is the more expensive the hotel, the better the service. And last one is the more I thought about the plan, it is about past. So at that time, the more I thought about the plan, the less I liked it. Now let's move forward, and here we can use all, any, none with comparative degree. Like, I'm sure that you must have heard about all the best. All the best. But just tell me that how many of you have actually heard it like this, all the better. हो सकता है आपको ये वर्जन गलत लगे कि नहीं मैम ऑल द बेस्ट होता है, ऑल द बेटर नहीं होता, बट ट्रस्ट मी दिस इज ऑल्सो करेक्ट, ऑल द बेटर भी होता है. अब अगर मैं ये कहूँ that I am feeling all the better today, that means I am feeling even better today as compared to yesterday. All the better means even better, even better. इस सेंस में हम इनको यूज करते हैं all the के साथ में comparative degree को. Examples में आते हैं. The burglary was all the more upsetting because the burglars broke up a whole lot of our furniture. Burglars यानी कि जो चोर वगैरह जो थे वो चोरी करने के लिए घुसे थे. तो यहाँ पे देखिए broke up मीन्स उन्होंने तोड़ दिया हमारा सारा फर्नीचर. सो इट वॉज ऑल द मोर अपसेटिंग. देखो अपसेटिंग तो वो थी, लेकिन क्योंकि फर्नीचर हमारा टूट गया, वो चोरी करके तो ले ही गए, साथ में फर्नीचर भी तोड़ गए, तो इस वजह से दिस बिकम्स इवन मोर अपसेटिंग, यानी कि पहले से कहीं ज्यादा अपसेटिंग हो गई है. इस वजह से हम यहाँ पे यूज करें इवन मोर या फिर ऑल द मोर, दोनों करेक्ट है. नेक्स्ट है Sunday mornings were nice. I enjoyed them all the more because we used to come around to breakfast. यानी कि जो संडे मॉर्निंग्स हैं वो अच्छी थी, मीन्स वर नाइस. वो पहले भी अच्छी थी, लेकिन उसके बाद में क्या हुआ कि ये जो पर्सन है स्यू, ये आने लगी ब्रेकफास्ट के टाइम पे, तो मुझे और भी ज्यादा अच्छा लगने लगा. वो जो हमारी मॉर्निंग्स थी वो और भी ज्यादा अच्छी होने लगी. ऑल द मोर मीन्स इवन मोर. नेक्स्ट इज I feel all the better for that swim. So I feel even better for that swimming session. Next is her accident made it all the more important to get home fast. Means her accident made it even more important for them to get home fast. He didn't seem to be any the worse for his experience. Again, even worse. Even worse. Next is he explained it all carefully, but I was still none the wiser. I was still not that much wiser at that time. So none means not that much. Well, here is a catch. You cannot use these structures like all, any, and none with comparative degrees when we talk about concrete ideas. These kind of formations are only available for abstract ideas, means for the ideas that are only in our thoughts. That means जिनको हम टच नहीं कर सकते वो होता है abstract, जो सिर्फ ख्यालों में होती बातें, मीन्स जो concrete नहीं होती चीजें. Concrete यानी कि जिनको हम टच कर सकते. फॉर एग्जाम्पल those pills have made him all the slimmer. अब ये नहीं कह सकते क्योंकि वो पतला हो गया. अब ये चीज तो abstract नहीं है, ये चीज concrete में आ जाती है. Now let's move forward, and here now this is our next concept that we can use: much, far, a lot, a bit, a little, and slightly with comparative degrees. To enhance their composition, to make them rise to a certain extent, means उनकी जो क्वालिटी है, या फिर मैं ये कहूँगी कि उनको थोड़ा सा एक्सटेंड करने के लिए, वो बढ़ा देने के लिए उनको. फॉर एग्जाम्पल अ लिटल मीन्स थोड़ा सा और ऐड कर दिया वहां पे. अब जैसे ये है वी कैन नॉट यूज वेरी विद कंपैरेटिव्स. ओके, द वेरी फर्स्ट थिंग इज वेरी can be used with a positive degree. For example, very can be used with good. Good. So like I have performed good, or I'm feeling good. So I can also say that I'm feeling very good, but I cannot say that I'm feeling very better, because I cannot use better means comparative degree with very. It would be incorrect. So we cannot use very with a comparative degree. That's why we can use much in that case. For example, I'm feeling much better. That would be correct. So example में आते हैं, my boyfriend is much older than me or my boyfriend is far older than me. दोनों करेक्ट हैं. या फिर आप इसको भी यूज कर सकते थे, a lot older than me. और आप a little इसको भी यूज कर सकते थे, a little older than me. इन सबको आप यूज कर सकते थे एक्सेप्ट very, क्योंकि ये हम केस देख चुके हैं, very को हम नहीं यूज करते. नेक्स्ट है Russian is much more difficult than Spanish, or you can also have said like Russian is far more difficult than Spanish. Russian is a bit more difficult, a little more difficult, slightly more difficult. ये सब आप यूज कर सकते थे. नेक्स्ट है very much nicer. अगेन देखिए यहाँ पे सारी आप कंपैरेटिव डिग्रीज देखोगे और उनके पहले जो जो पॉसिबल वर्ड्स हैं, जो जो इसकी इंटेंसिटी को इंक्रीज करने के लिए आप यूज कर सकते हो, वो सारे यहाँ पे गिवन है. फर्स्ट है very much, आप यूज कर सकते हो very much with comparative degree like very much nicer. Next is a lot happier, rather more quickly, a little less expensive, a bit more sensible, or is your mother any better, means is she better than yesterday. Next is she looks no older than her daughter, means we can also use no before older, before comparative degree. Next is your cooking is even worse than Henry's. And last one is there are much nicer shops in the town center, or you can also say that there are far nicer shops, there are a bit nicer shops, there are way nicer shops. You can also use this word way, means way better, way nicer means far better or far nicer. Next is I felt ill earlier but I feel much better now, or you can also say that a lot better now. But remember, you cannot use a lot of better. It is a lot better. Next is don't go by train. It is a lot more expensive, or much more expensive, or a little more expensive, or it is rather more expensive. Next is could you speak a bit more slowly or a little more slowly. This bag is slightly heavier than the other one, and this problem is far more or bit more serious or way more serious than we thought at first. Next is the usage of any or no with comparative degree. I waited long enough. I'm not waiting any longer. अब यहाँ पे देखिए longer, longer को हमने longer यानी कि comparative degree है ये अपने आप में एक long, longer, longest. any के साथ में हम इनको यूज कर रहे हैं, any और no के साथ में, यानी कि नेगेटिव के केस में हम यूज कर रहे हैं इसे. जब भी हम any और no को यूज करते हैं वो सेंटेंस को थोड़ा सा नेगेटिव बना देता है. any भी सेंटेंस को थोड़ा सा नेगेटिव बना देता है, ऑफ कोर्स no तो बनाएगा ही. तो अब यहाँ देखिए I'm not waiting any longer. Next is we expected their apartment to be very big but it is no bigger than ours. No bigger. अब यहाँ देखना not bigger, ये भी आप यूज कर सकते थे, it is not bigger than ours, लेकिन यहाँ पे ये यूसेज बताया गया है आपको that no bigger आप ये भी यूज कर सकते हो, no के साथ में भी आप comparative degree यूज कर सकते हो. नेक्स्ट है how do you feel now, do you feel any better, और नेक्स्ट है no more expensive, it is no more expensive. आप not को भी यूज कर सकते थे, लेकिन एक ही बात को कहने का अलग मेथड ये भी हो सकता है that no more आप यूज कर सको. नेक्स्ट है very with superlatives. पहले हमने ये पढ़ा कि very को हम पॉजिटिव डिग्री के साथ में तो यूज कर सकते हैं, वेरी गुड हम बोल सकते हैं, वेरी बैड हम बोल सकते हैं, बट वेरी को हम कंपैरेटिव डिग्री के साथ में नहीं यूज कर सकते. ऐसे केसेस में हमने ये इसके काफी सारे सब्स्टिट्यूट्स देखे, जैसे कि फार, वे, मोर, लॉट, ये सारी चीजें हमने देखी, मच. लेकिन अब बात आती है सुपरलेटिव डिग्री की, तो वेरी को हम सभी सुपरलेटिव्स के साथ में नहीं यूज कर सकते. ध्यान रखना सिर्फ 3 सुपरलेटिव्स हैं, मींस एक्सेप्शंस हैं ये, बिकॉज इंग्लिश इज अ लैंग्वेज एंड देयर आर ऑलवेज एक्सेप्शंस इन केस ऑफ लैंग्वेज. तो इस वजह से हम यहाँ पे सिर्फ इन तीनों को वेरी के साथ में यूज कर सकते हैं, बाकी सबके साथ में नहीं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ग्रेटेस्ट, let's say it is a superlative degree by the way, so let's say Alexander was the greatest king, so you cannot say that Alexander was the very greatest king, that would be incorrect. So you can use very only with these superlatives. So इनकी हम एक बार पॉजिटिव और कंपैरेटिव देख लेते हैं, क्योंकि हो सकता है आप में से कुछ कोई डाउट हो कि लास्ट जो है और फर्स्ट ये सुपरलेटिव कैसे हो गए? तो देखिए यहाँ पॉजिटिव डिग्री, कंपैरेटिव डिग्री, सॉरी सुपरलेटिव डिग्री. सो for, former, foremost, foremost. And here are two superlatives for the word for. One is foremost, another is first. Next case is near, near, nearer, nearest, and next. Again, there are two superlatives for this word near. And the next is this word last. I think you are all aware of this word, but still I am writing it here. Late, later, latest, and last. So इसी तरह से हम very को यूज कर सकते हैं कुछ selected superlatives के केस में, सभी के साथ में नहीं, बट कुछ ही कैसी हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जैसे एक यहाँ पे है बेस्ट, बेस्ट भी सुपरलेटिव है, इसके साथ में भी हम यूज कर सकते हैं. ब्रिंग आउट द वेरी बेस्ट वाइन, माइकल इज कमिंग टू डिनर, मीन्स जो तुम्हारी बेस्ट है, बेस्ट से भी अच्छी, मीन्स वेरी, वेरी इंटेंसिटी बढ़ाने के, इंटेंसिफायर है वेरी. नेक्स्ट है यू आर द वेरी फर्स्ट पर्सन आई हैव स्पोकन टू टुडे. वेरी फर्स्ट, दिस इज योर वेरी लास्ट चांस. ये हम सिर्फ इंटेंसिफाई करने के लिए इनको यूज करते हैं. नाउ मच, बाय फार, क्वाइट विद सुपरलेटिव्स. हमने इन वर्ड्स को अभी तक यूज किया है कंपैरेटिव के साथ में, अब सुपरलेटिव के साथ में भी देख लेते हैं. मच को, बाय फार, इसको. जैसे भी यहाँ देखिए ही इज मच द मोस्ट सुपरलेटिव है. द ओल्डेस्ट, ये भी सुपरलेटिव है. आर्टिकल द, we always use article the with superlative degree before using a superlative degree. So he is much the most imaginative of them all, means he is the most imaginative of them all. Next is she is by far the oldest, means she is oldest of them all. Next is we are walking by far the slowest, means we are walking at very slow pace. Next is he is quite means completely, absolutely, perfectly. So he is absolutely, he is quite the most stupid man I have ever met. Next is I am nearly the oldest in the firm. So ये बहुत सारे मेथड्स हैं जिनसे आप अपनी इंटेंसिटी को, अपने कहने की जो एक्सटेंट है उसको आप बढ़ा सकते हो. This is easily the worst party I have ever been to this year. Next में आते हैं डायरेक्ट. This is your task for tomorrow's class. आपको यहाँ पे इनमें से चूज करना है. ये इसी सीरीज में है, ये फर्स्ट, सेकेंड, थर्ड, फोर्थ, फिफ्थ एंड सिक्स्थ. सो इसी तरह से आपको इनमें से करना है. नेक्स्ट है यहाँ पे भी आप एक बार देख लेना किस तरह से करना है. आज के सेशन में ही सारे जो वर्ड्स यूज हुए हैं उन्हीं को आपको यहाँ अगेन यूज करना है. नाउ लेट्स मूव टू द लास्ट पार्ट एंड दैट इज ऑफ वोकैबुलरी पार्ट. आज कुछ और प्रोवर्ब्स हम करते हैं. तो देखिए फर्स्ट है हमारी he tends to get what he wants because money talks. तो मनी टॉक्स यानी कि पैसा बोलता है. तो उसका मीनिंग क्या होता है? ये तो हमने बहुत बार सुना है. इसका मीनिंग ये है कि जिसके पास वेल्थ है, जिसके पास मनी है, उसके पास पावर भी है. उसके लिए हम ये यूज करते हैं इफ यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ मनी यू विल हैव मोर पावर टू इन्फ्लुएंस अदर्स. नेक्स्ट इज he treats her very badly. उसको बहुत बुरी तरह से ट्रीट करता है. but she doesn't realize, लेकिन उसको तो रियलाइज ही नहीं होता. love is blind in her case. love is blind यानी कि जब आप किसी को प्यार करते हो तो उस टाइम पे उनके जितने भी फॉल्ट्स होते हैं आप उनको नेग्लेक्ट कर देते हो, आप उनको इग्नोर, नजरअंदाज कर देते हो. तो वहां पे हम इसको यूज करते हैं that love is blind. एक और यहाँ पे प्रोवर्ब मैं यूज करना चाहूंगी about this same issue, that you cannot be wise and in love at the same time. कि एक ही टाइम पे आप प्यार में भी और वाइज भी हो, ये नहीं पॉसिबल. या तो आप प्यार में रहोगे या वाइज रहोगे. सो ये एक प्रोवर्ब थी, तो ये भी मैंने यहाँ पे नोट डाउन कर दी है. नेक्स्ट में आते हैं डोंट वरी, लाइटनिंग नेवर स्ट्राइक्स ट्वाइस इन द सेम पर्सन, या सॉरी इन द सेम प्लेस, या फिर ऑन द सेम पर्सन, आप दोनों यूज कर सकते हो. अब लाइटनिंग, यहाँ पे लाइटनिंग यानी कि जो आसमान से बिजली गिरती है उसकी बात हो रही है कि वो लगातार दूसरी बार एक ही जगह पे या एक ही पर्सन पे नहीं गिरती, यानी कि कोई भी अनयूजुअल अनप्लेजेंट हैपनिंग होती है, अनप्लेजेंट इवेंट होता है, कोई बुरी घटना होती है, वो एक ही बंदे के साथ उसी तरह से दोबारा नहीं होती, या फिर आप ये भी कह सकते हो कोई सेम प्लेस पे वो दोबारा से वैसी नहीं होती। नेक्स्ट इज डोंट से एनीथिंग एट द मोमेंट, लेट द स्लीपिंग डॉग्स लाई। यानी कि आपने हिंदी में सुना होगा गड़े मुर्दे मत उखाड़ो, यानी कि जो पुराने टाइम में जो भी बातें चल रही थी, जो भी अनप्लेजेंट सिचुएशन थी हमारे बीच में, उसको वहीं पे रहने दो, दोबारा से उसको बीच में हमारे मत लेके आओ। तो उसके लिए हम इसको यूज करते हैं लेट द स्लीपिंग डॉग्स लाई, यानी अवॉइड मेंशनिंग अ पर्टिकुलर डिफिकल्ट सब्जेक्ट। ऐसे किसी बात को बीच में डिस्कशन में लाने से अवॉइड करो जिससे आपको पता है कि लड़ाई हो सकती है, आगे चल के ट्रबल हो सकता है, यानी कि गड़े मुर्दे मत उखाड़ो। इसके लगभग सिमिलर एक और मैं यहाँ पे प्रोवर्ब मेंशन करना चाहूंगी, लेट बायगॉन्स। अब और ये जो है बायगॉन्स एक साथ में है और उसके बाद में है बी बायगॉन्स। लेट बायगॉन्स बी बायगॉन्स, यानी कि जो बीत गया उसको भूल जाओ, नई स्टार्टिंग करते हैं, जो बीत गया उसको वहां पे पास्ट में ही रहने दो, लेट बायगॉन्स बी बायगॉन्स। नेक्स्ट है शी स्पेंड्स आवर्स एट पियानो बट प्रैक्टिस मेक्स परफेक्ट, और प्रैक्टिस मेक्स अ पर्सन परफेक्ट, यानी कि जितनी प्रैक्टिस वो पर्सन करेगा उतना वो परफेक्ट होगा। ये तो आपने सबने बहुत बार सुना होगा। डायरेक्ट नेक्स्ट में आते हैं, आई हैवंट हर्ड फ्रॉम माई सन फॉर वीक्स बट यूजुअली नो न्यूज इज गुड न्यूज, यानी कि उसके पास से अगर कोई खबर नहीं आ रही है तो ये एक अच्छी खबर है, क्या पता कोई खबर आए और वो कोई बुरी खबर हो। तो अक्सर ये कहा जाता है कि अगर कोई खबर नहीं आ रही है दैट मीन्स सब कुछ सही है, सब कुछ सुरक्षित है, तो वही इसका मीनिंग है नो न्यूज इज गुड न्यूज इन इटसेल्फ। तो ये था हमारा आज का वोकैब पार्ट, और सो गाइस थैंक्स फॉर लिसनिंग एंड जस्ट कीप प्रैक्टिसिंग।